Hello and welcome to the Christ Lutheran Church Sermon Podcast. This is Matthew Best. I serve as pastor of Christ Lutheran Church in Allison Hill in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for being here. If today's message connects with you and what you're going through, brings you inspiration, or offers connection with God, I ask you to please stay on after the message for just a few moments to learn ways to connect with the congregation and the health ministries that we offer. And now, let's dive into God's Word. Our reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, verses 1 to 32. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who need no repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels over one sinner who repents. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of property that will belong to me." So he divided the property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in desolate living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of the country, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he had come to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against both heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field. When he had came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have worked like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat, so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who had devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I'm going to show you some pictures. Some of these are probably very familiar to you. And as soon as I show you the first one, you're probably going to know what's going on. But what do you see? What do you see? What do you see? What do you see? Go ahead. Two things. All right. Getting ahead. What do you see? What do you see first? A duck. How many? All right. So I heard duck and I heard rabbit. Ooh, a pelican. Now that's interesting. I haven't seen that. All right. So how many of you first saw a rabbit? Okay. How many of you first saw a duck? How many of you first saw something else? All right. All right. Same picture. Same picture. They're all there. Different perspectives, right? I mean, now all of a sudden it looks more like a rabbit, right? So that's one. All right, here's another one. Here's another one. A donkey, okay. What?
It's a seal.
A seal? A donkey, a seal? All right. And the answer, of course, is yes. It's both of those. A donkey, a seal, some say a horse. And if you do this, it looks more like a seal. You can see it now, that type of thing, right? One more. One more. One more. Okay, what do you see? What's the first thing you see?
Two faces.
Two faces. A vase.
Looks like an hourglass.
An hourglass, okay. Two faces or a vase or an hourglass. Kind of the same idea in there, right? Both are correct. Different things. You've probably seen these before, right? There's a whole bunch of other ones. Some neat ones that have allusions in them about whether the lines are all the same and all that type of stuff, right? Those are neat because they give us this idea of oftentimes we're familiar with them, but there's multiple things going on at the same time. In our brains, oftentimes we see certain things first, and then we get a little more information. Somebody might point something out, and then we can see things a bit differently. And we can start to see the other way as well. I think that is really, when I think about this reading, that's really a key with what's going on in this reading. The very beginning, these are familiar passages, familiar parables, right? I mean, I don't know of anybody who doesn't know the parable of the prodigal son. That is one of the most common parables ever. Parable of the lost sheep is pretty well known by a lot of folks. Parable of the lost coin, maybe not as much. It's shorter, but it's grouped in with these two other ones, pretty common. And the challenge with having very familiar passages of Scripture is we kind of know them. And we have our thought on what it is that we're hearing already in mind. But there's a lot of things that we can play around with and ask questions and start to see things maybe a little bit different. I want to do that today. And it starts with the very two first verses. And you can follow along. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him. The tax collectors and the sinners. Who are these people? Well, the tax collectors work for Rome, the occupying force. They're considered traitors to the Jews. They are unclean. And sinners. We had this discussion in the adult Bible conversation. Could be people who've done some bad things, but it's also just people who in the course of their lives have become ritually unclean. They're considered a sinner. And maybe they haven't gotten to the temple yet. Maybe they can't afford to go to the temple and offer a sacrifice, and they remain unclean. Maybe because of what they do, they're constantly being touched by unclean things. And it doesn't give them an opportunity to ever become clean again in a ritual way. So they're sinners. They're the untouchables. They're the ones that get pushed away, that nobody wants to be near because your cooties could get on me and make me unclean in a ritual, spiritual, religious way. Okay? So they are coming near to listen to him. Why are they coming to listen to him? Go back, all the way back to Jesus' first sermon. He opens, remember he's in his hometown. He goes to the synagogue and he opens the scroll from Isaiah and he reads Isaiah. I've come to share good news to the poor, to set the captives free, all the things that go with that. And he rolls it up and he says, this has been fulfilled in your hearing. That's been the whole theme all along. And so, of course, what's he been doing? He's been curing the sick, giving sight to the blind, raising the dead, proclaiming good news to the poor, setting people free from possession, all the things that he read about in Isaiah. He's been doing those things. And so these people who are on the outside, of course they're attracted to him. My gosh, he's giving them hope. As I've said before, he sees them and he hears them. And he's telling them they're not alone and he's offering hope. Of course they're coming. And then the second group. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling. You can almost hear that, right? And they're saying, this fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. Oh boy. There's a bit of a hierarchical structure going on, a division between the ritually pure and the ritually unpure, the clean and the unclean, the insiders and the outsiders. This fellow, they don't even say his name. This fellow, because saying his name, he's obviously must be dirty because he's hanging out with people who are dirty. And we all know that dirty things can make clean things dirty. That's the thought process that's going on. That's the reason why the Pharisees and the scribes are always pushing away and offering separation, because they don't want to become ritually unclean. Because then you got to go through all the hoops of offering something and this, that, and the other thing. This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. Verse 3, short little verse. So he told them a parable. Who's them? Who's them? There's a lot of assumptions that end up being made. I will say I've never heard a sermon in my entire life that asked the question about who's them? Everybody starts with an assumption, he's clearly telling these parables to the tax collectors and the sinners. No, he's clearly telling these parables to the Pharisees and the scribes. I'm going to say that he's telling the parable to both. These parables speak to both of their situations, which I find to be amazing. So you got this first parable, the sheep, right? There's lots of interpretations on this, the lost sheep. There's kind of this common Western thought process, right? We come in with our lenses. And a Western thought process is very individualistic. That seems to be the focus, right? And so it gets taught of, the sheep gets lost, the shepherd goes, finds the sheep, good for the sheep. Okay, yeah, that's true, and we're missing a piece. There's a more Eastern and more ancient thought process, which is sheep gets lost, shepherd goes get the sheep, bring the sheep back so that the herd can be whole again. Good for the herd. Yeah, that's true too. Two very different perspectives. And oftentimes what I hear all the time is, the shepherd is God, the shepherd is Jesus. But it raises some questions. What if Jesus isn't putting himself in the story? What kind of shepherd loses a sheep and then leaves 99 of them? Just leaves them. Not knowing where the sheep went, not knowing how long he's going to be away. Does that sound godly? Maybe it's not about God. The woman has 10 silver coins, and she loses one. She sweeps, she looks all over the place, and then she finds it. Oftentimes, again, it's preached kind of like, oh, the woman is like is like God. Is God that careless to lose something that valuable? I mean, sheep can get up and walk off, granted. But a coin doesn't just grow legs and take off. Maybe the woman isn't God either. And of course, you have the parable of the prodigal son. And oftentimes the father in the story gets cast as, oh, this is God, a loving God. And there's certainly aspects of that are true, and it makes for a great sermon, and it's probably one of the most common ways that this is interpreted. But you got to ask some questions about the story. The younger son comes and says, hey, can I have my half of the inheritance? And he just says, sure. No offense, boys. But no, that's not happening. Plus, you wouldn't get a whole lot. So, that's Did he have to sell? Like, clearly he's got a huge property. Did he have to sell some of the property? What about the rest of the family? This has an impact on the whole family. Was there no question of why do you want this now? Seems kind of irresponsible on the father's part to just, yeah, sure, here you go. I think there's a lot of really interesting dynamics. Maybe the father in this story is not God. I think oftentimes when we hear these type of parables, Jesus is doing something on purpose, right? He hears grumbling, and then he doesn't respond, but he addresses it. Go back to what they're grumbling about. This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. He doesn't just welcome sinners. He invites, he eats with them, and he celebrates with them. Question, who else is going to celebrate? Each of these three stories have a theme that's going on. It's not just lost and found. That's kind of the obvious story, right? People and things are going to be lost, and either someone is out searching or there is some kind of change that happens that brings somebody back, and they are found. And that's a beautiful thing. It's absolutely beautiful. And I'm not trying to dismiss all the other ways that these passages have been proclaimed and preached. I think there is value, and I think, again, kind of like these things that I had shown you, there's different ways of looking at these stories. One of the things that happens in here is that every single one of these offers a few common themes. One, notice that when the sheep is lost, the sheep doesn't have less value. It has just as much value as the other 99. That's why the shepherd goes in search. The sheep isn't anything less. Its station is just different. And that can change. Lost isn't permanent. Lost is just a state at a time, and it can change. I mean, if any of you have ever gone on a trip, at some point I'm going to guess that you've probably been lost at some point. Maybe not terrifyingly lost, but kind of like, I remember one time we went to New York City. We got out of the subway and we were just disoriented of like, where are we? Because, you come out and you're just, we'll look up in the sky. Well, sure, with all the skyscrapers, right? And thankfully, some of the local kids nearby saw us and they said, hey, do you need help? And they reoriented us. We were no longer lost. And it was wonderful to have that kind of a little bit of grace and help with that. The coins, 10 silver coins, obviously worth something, loses one, doesn't mean that the one that's lost is worth anything less. That's why the woman is going and searching. There's something of value there. And something's missing. There's not this wholeness. And of course, the easy one, the obvious one, the story of the prodigal son is that this father clearly loves both of his sons very much. They're both valuable in innumerable ways, in unspeakable ways. Cares very deeply about them. So there's that issue of value and worth that has nothing to do with what somebody has done or where somebody has gone or anything of that. The other part of this is that, and I think, John, you had mentioned this, there's this mention of celebration. These people love to celebrate. There's always a party going on. What's interesting about this is that at the end of each of these, it's the same situation. First one, the sheep. When the shepherd comes home after finding the lost sheep, he calls his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I found my lost sheep." We don't know if the celebration actually happens or not, but they're invited. There's been something important that has happened, and there's been an invitation extended. Some may come, some may not. The lost coin. Woman, when she finds the lost coin, calls together her friends and neighbors, says, "Rejoice with me, for I found the coin that I lost." We don't know if they come over or not. Does she spend any money to have a celebration, which is kind of ironic, given she lost a coin? But the invitation is extended. And of course, the story of the prodigal son, it could have ended and been very similar to the first two parables. It could have ended at the end of verse 24. "For this son of mine was dead and alive again, and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to celebrate." That would have been similar to the other one. In this case, there is a celebration. But Jesus goes on with this one. His elder son is in the field, and he came and approached the house. He heard music and dancing. You imagine being the older son? Nobody thought to say, "You might want to come to the house. Your younger brother came home." I find that interesting. I don't know what Jesus is thinking, and I don't pretend to read minds. It's certainly not Jesus' mind, but I found that to be like, whoa, no wonder he's upset. So, the slave tells him, and then you got this kind of back and forth. The slave says, "Your brother has come home." The older brother gets angry, refuses to go in. His father comes out, and he says to his father, "I've been working here. I've never disobeyed you or anything. You never let me celebrate my friends. But this son of yours," kind of a disowning that's going on. And the father says, "Son, you've always been with me. We had to celebrate because this brother of yours," who does he belong to? And at the end, the celebration is going on. We don't know what happens. The invitation is extended, but we don't know. Will the older brother go in or not? In one sense, this goes back again to the very beginning of the passage. The tax collectors and the sinners were coming to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." Jesus is doing what he has always been doing. He's extending grace. He's offering healing. He is inviting into the celebration of people whose lives are changed. Not just changed. The Greek term is metanoia for repentance, which means a radical reorientation. It's a complete turning back towards God. And in that there is celebration. Because one that was lost is now found. One is in right relationship with God. And it didn't require going through hoops. It was an invitation from Jesus, an invitation from God. God has done the work and invites us to celebrate. When we do communion, we're invited to the table, not because I have magic hands and I have magic words. I'm no different than any of you all. I have not changed in any way. I have a certain role and, those type of things. But it's not my table. It's Jesus' table. Jesus is the one inviting us to participate. That's the idea. There's lots of different ways that we can see these stories. There's lots of different things going on. There's lots of questions. And it all comes down to the same thing. We're invited. And we're offered the opportunity to invite others. And I'm going to close with a story that was told by Wayne Dwyer, of all people. And he told this story, so I'm giving him full credit. This is his story. And I just found it so very fitting with what's going on in here. So this is again the story told by Wayne Dwyer. There's a story many years ago of an elementary teacher. Her name was Mrs. Thompson. And as she stood in front of the fifth grade class on the very first day of school, she told the children a lie. Like most teachers, she looked at her students and said she loved them all the same. But that was impossible, because there in the front row, slumped in his seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Mrs. Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed he didn't play well with the other children, that his clothes were messy, and that he constantly needed a bath, and Teddy could be unpleasant. It got to the point where Mrs. Thompson could actually take delight in marking his papers with a broad red pen, marking bold X's and then putting the big F at the top of the paper. At the school where Mrs. Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's past records, and she put Teddy's off until last. However, when she reviewed his file, she was in for a surprise. Teddy's first grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is a brilliant child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly and has good manners. He is a joy to be around." His second grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is an excellent student, well liked by his classmates, but he is troubled because his mother had a terminal illness and life at home must be a struggle." His third grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show much interest, and his home life will soon affect him if some steps aren't taken." Teddy's fourth grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is withdrawn and doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends, and he sometimes sleeps in class." By now, Mrs. Thompson realized the problem, and she was ashamed of herself. She felt even worse when her students brought her Christmas presents wrapped in beautiful ribbons and bright paper, except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in the heavy brown paper that he got from a grocery bag. Mrs. Thompson took pains to open it. In the middle of the other presents, some of the children started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with some of the stones missing and a bottle that was 1/4 full of perfume. but she stifled the children's laughter when she explained how pretty the bracelet was, putting it on and dabbing some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy Stoddard stayed after school that day just long enough to say, "Mrs. Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to." After the children left, she cried for at least an hour. On that day, she quit teaching reading and writing and arithmetic. Instead, she began to teach children. Mrs. Thompson paid particular attention to Teddy, and as she worked with him, his mind seemed to come alive. The more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. By the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest children in the class. And despite her lie that she would love all the children the same, Teddy became one of her teacher's pets. A year later, she found a note under her door from Teddy telling her that she was still the best teacher he had ever had in his whole life. 6 years went by before he got another note. She got another note. He then wrote that he had finished high school third in his class, and she was still the best teacher he'd ever had in his whole life. 4 years after that, she got another letter saying that while things had been tough at times, he'd stayed in school, had stuck with it, and soon graduate with college with the highest of honors. He assured Mrs. Thompson that she was still the best and favorite teacher he had ever had in his whole life. 4 years passed, another letter. This time he explained that he got his bachelor's degree. He decided to go a little further. The letter explained that she was still his best and favorite teacher, but now his name was a little bit longer. The letter was signed Theodore Stoddard, MD. The story doesn't end there. You see, there was yet another letter that spring. Teddy said he'd met this girl and was going to be married. He explained that his father had died a couple of years ago, and he was wondering if Mrs. Thompson might agree to sit in the place at the wedding that was usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Of course, Mrs. Thompson did. And guess what? She wore that bracelet, the one with several rhinestones missing, and she made sure that she was wearing the perfume that Teddy remembered his mother wearing on their last Christmas together. They hugged each other, and Dr. Stoddard whispered in Mrs. Thompson's ear, "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for believing me. Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I can make a difference." Mrs. Thompson, with tears in her eyes, whispered back, she said, "Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one that taught me that I can make a difference, and I didn't know how to teach until I met you." Thanks be to God. Thank you again for listening to the Sermon Podcast. I'm always happy to have a conversation or pray with you. Please reach out either by email to pastor@christharrisburg.org or call me at 717-236-8382. I'd also invite you to be part of worship on Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. We're a very diverse, open, affirming, and laid-back congregation. Christ Lutheran Church is located at 124 South 13th Street in Harrisburg. Parking is along the street. You can enter the building through the side entrance on South 13th Street or at the corner of 13th and Thompson Streets. And lastly, check us out on the web. Our website is christharrisburg.org. There you can learn more about and offer your support for the congregation, as well as the health ministries and free clinics that we provide to people in need in our neighborhood. I invite you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, also at Christ Lutheran Harrisburg. Thank you. I look forward to connecting with you, and I pray that you have a blessed week.